Everybody. My name is Quinn Bradley. I am the founder and director of Friends of Quinn. And today my interviewee is Elisheva Schwartz. So tell me a little bit about how you started to do what it is that you do.
Wow, that's a long conversation, but I guess the roots of it really started around second grade when I started getting kicked out of class because I was having difficulty with what was going on in the classroom. There was a lot of technical based skills, and that manifested as disciplinary issues. And I remember being a tiny little second grader being kicked out into the hallways of this huge school and being absolutely terrified. And my school difficulties continued to increase. And by the time I was in fifth grade, my mother got a call from the principal. And the principal said that, your daughter needs tutoring for this, and your daughter needs tutoring for this, and she needs tutoring for this in order to go on to middle school. And my mother started counting up the hours that I would need outside tutoring, and my mother says to the principal, that's more hours than she has available in the week.
Yeah.
So things were pretty tough, and I went to a different middle school that was more helpful. But during those school years, I spent a lot of time avoiding class. And what I would do is I would go into the hallways, and they were these long, extended trips to the bathroom. And I would really roam up and down, and I had all this time to think because I didn't want to be inside the classroom because it didn't feel like a welcoming space. And I remember from my early memories, and they were pre-middle school memories because I remember the hallways, really thinking about what is education? What does it mean? What are the schools trying to accomplish over here? And also, how important is education? So I thought about this a lot because I would get back standardized tests and I would be in the 10th percentile. And as a child, I thought, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about how predictive is this about my future success? So from my youngest ages that I can remember, I was really fascinated with this topic, which is, is success in school really predictive in success in life? So for a long time, I kind of gravitated towards exploring this issue around how people are successful. And not really being so focused on the entire learning disability conversation because I never really identified as somebody that had a learning disability. I was having a very difficult time in school, but the term learning disabled just sounded so icky and not like me that I never really identified with that community. And then as I started getting older, and I came across Brock and Ferned Idy's book, which was actually revolutionary and completely changed the way I look at things. And I also came across the work that they were doing with David Flink at Project Eye to Eye. And I actually just interviewed both of those individuals. I interviewed Dr. Brock Idy for my show, and I just interviewed David Flink. Hopefully the full podcast will be out soon.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. And they really shifted the way I was thinking about learning disabilities and shifting it from learning disabilities to learning differences. And I said, wow, that's me. I have a learning difference in this. So I think my scientific and inquisitive mind that was all fascinated with how do we hack success became fascinated with the question of kind of what is this whole learning disability conversation and learning difference conversation. And I've kind of been on that journey ever since for the past 5 or 6 years. And recently in the past year, I kind of formalized that journey in my podcast, which is called the Dyslexia Quest. And it really has that same spirit of inquiry that I think I had as a 5-year-old roaming the halls up and down, which is on this quest, why are some people doing really badly in school and really well in life, and some people doing really badly in life and did really well in school, and all these questions that I had. And it's still that spirit of inquiry that's driving me to really explore the dyslexic processing style. So on my podcast, I kind of have a mix of people that are involved in research because I'm fascinated with the research of cognition and thinking and what's happening in our brains and what's happening in different people's brains and how is learning different for different individuals. And at the same time, I think the research community needs to really be influenced by the dyslexic population. And they can't look at it through tiny little scope of only seeing these individuals perform, let's say, an exam, a working memory exam, and think that they understand them. They need to understand the dyslexic population as whole, vibrant people, and see and interacting with that population should impact their research. And I also think the research that's going on around neurodiversity and the strengths of the dyslexic brain can go ahead and empower the dyslexic population. So I really like that conversation between people that are involved in research and people that are dyslexic individuals themselves. And I'm trying to kind of create a community on the web where that conversation happens.
And you have a website, is that correct?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's elisheva.schwartz.com. But the main thing that's really going on right now is the podcast. Mm-hmm. So the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, you can subscribe on Stitcher Radio, and I also put out little videos from excerpts from these long 45-minute podcasts, these 2-3 minute impactful quotes on YouTube and on social media. So really just trying to create a community where people can come and explore. So other explorers like myself that were so curious about like why when I am in school is everything that's hard for me easy for other people and things that are easy for me were hard for other people. Yeah. It just seemed like such a big mystery that people can come together and explore this communally.
Sure. And how long have you been doing your website for and the podcast?
So the website stuff started a little bit earlier than the podcast. I had a blog and I was exploring these issues a little bit, but the podcast has been going on for a year.
Mm-hmm. And what advice would you give to young adults with people with learning differences, as I like to call them myself? What advice would you give?
Yeah. I would say that people that have learning differences need to get very good at listening to what they need. And I think very often we know what we need to be successful and we know what we need to be happy, but it looks so different or you go about it in such a different way than other people, maybe your siblings, maybe your peers and contemporaries, that we doubt it. And we think we need to go down the traditional routes because we want to be like everybody else and we want to be a success. But I really think for people that maybe have a more alternative way of processing information, they need to also trust that their route to wherever they're going might be different. And I think that that's a huge key. I think the difference between people that I've interviewed on my show that have been very successful with dyslexia, each one of them tuned in and knew what they needed and trusted that to do things a little bit unconventionally.
Well, Elisheva, thank you so much. I really appreciate the interview.
Pleasure, Quinn.